The war did not end immediately, but everyone could feel the change. The swarm forces that had been pushing toward the Union's core worlds began to retreat. Without their queen and infected with the Earth virus, their perfect coordination fell apart. They scattered into deep space, fleeing back to whatever dark corner of the galaxy they had come from. Forward base. Theta slowly returned to something resembling normal. Repair crews worked day and night to fix the damage. Supply ships arrived with food, medicine, and replacement parts. The wounded were evacuated to better medical facilities. The dead were honored with ceremonies from 7 different species. High Strategist Veltoth stood in the memorial garden that had been built in the station's central dome. Names were carved into crystal pillars glowing softly in the dim light. Human names and alien names side by side. United in sacrifice, Commander Hyunwoo stood beside him. Both were quiet for a long time. "I did not believe you could do it," Veltoth admitted finally. "When you first arrived, I thought you were brave but doomed. I thought we would watch you die just as we had watched so many others die." "We almost did die," Hyunwoo replied. "Many of us did. But you held when no one else could. You attacked when any sane species would have defended. You won battles that should have been impossible." Veltoth turned to face the human commander. "I have been studying your world, trying to understand. Earth is a nightmare planet. How does your species not only survive but thrive?" Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Earth taught us that nothing is given. Everything has to be earned. Survival, prosperity, peace, we fight for all of it. That's why we're good at fighting. We've had 10,000 generations of practice, and you were forged in fire," Veltoth said. "And so we learned not to fear the flames." In the medical bay, Medic Sumin was making final rounds before she shipped back to Earth. Most of the critical patients had stabilized. Sergeant Young-Sik was sitting up in his bed arguing with a nurse about when he could return to duty. "You lost 3 liters of blood and had a collapsed lung," the nurse was saying. "You need at least 2 more weeks of recovery." "I've had worse," Young-Sik grumbled. But when he saw Sumin, he smiled. "Doctor, tell them I'm fine." "You're not fine," Sumin said, checking his charts. "But you will be. Your body is healing faster than expected. Human resilience at work." An alien medic who had been training with Sumin approached nervously. "May I ask something personal?" "Go ahead," Sumin replied. "How do you not break? I have seen you work for days without sleep, treating injuries that would traumatize most beings, losing patience despite your best efforts. Yet you continue. How?" Sumin thought about it. "We carry the weight because no one else can. That's what being human means. We endure so others don't have to." The alien medic bowed deeply. "I hope to be worthy of what you have taught me." "You already are," Sumin said kindly. "You stayed during the siege when you could have run. You learned when you could have given up. Courage isn't about where you're from. It's about who you choose to be." Captain Daun was in the fighter bay, supervising the maintenance of her squadron's surviving ships. Her own fighter was a total loss, too damaged to repair. She stood beside it, one hand on the scarred hull. "You served well," she said quietly to the machine. It was a human custom, thanking their vehicles. The machines didn't understand, but it made the pilots feel better. One of the alien pilots approached. He had flown beside her squadron during the assault, in one of the Union's advanced interceptors. "Captain Daun, may I speak with you?" "Of course. I watched you fly during the battle. I have never seen anyone push their craft so hard. You flew past the safety limits, past what should be possible. How did you know the ship could handle it?" Daun smiled slightly. "I didn't, but I knew I could. That's the difference. Our machines are tools, good tools, but still just tools. It's the pilot that matters, the will to push past fear and pain and exhaustion. You make it sound simple. It's not simple at all. It's the hardest thing in the universe. But that's what we do." Lieutenant Kite presented his final report to the Union Scientific Council. They sat in a semicircle, representatives from 6 different species, all brilliant minds who had studied the swarm for years. "The viral agent exceeded all expectations," Kite explained. "Infection rate was 97% within the first 72 hours. Coordination disruption was observed in 84% of infected warriors. No mutations detected so far, but we recommend continued monitoring." "You created a plague," one scientist said. "It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact." "I created a weapon," Kite corrected, "one that saved billions of lives." "Would you prefer I had not?" The scientist was quiet. Finally, they said, "You think differently than we do. Your solutions are aggressive. Our world is aggressive. We adapted to match it. Now that adaptation has saved your world. Kite looked at each council member in turn. I understand this makes you uncomfortable, but sometimes the answer to violence is greater violence. Sometimes the answer to strength is greater strength. That's the reality of survival. Private Taemin, now Corporal Taemin after his actions in the hive ship, stood on an observation deck watching supply ships come and go. His promotion had come with a medal and a personal commendation from Commander Hyunwoo. He still couldn't quite believe it. Ambassador Bora found him there. Congratulations on your promotion, Corporal. Thank you, Ambassador. Taemin stood at attention, at ease. I just wanted to talk. Bora joined him at the window. This was your first real combat mission, wasn't it? Yes, ma'am. How do you feel about what happened? Taemin thought about it carefully. I feel like I understand now. Why we train so hard, why the standards are so high. It's not to make us stronger than we are. It's to prepare us for when we need to be stronger than we think we can be. That's very wise for someone so young. Sergeant Young Sik taught me that. Before the Queen, Damon's voice caught. He saved my life. He gave me the chance to complete the mission. And you took that chance and succeeded. He would be proud. He is proud. I hear he's recovering well. The Galactic Union Council met for a formal session 1 week after the battle ended. The chamber was full, with representatives from all member species. Ambassador Bora stood at the speaker's podium, representing Earth. The council recognizes Ambassador Bora of Earth, the chairman announced. Bora stepped forward. She had practiced this speech 100 times, but now the words came naturally. Honored Council, I stand before you today to formally request full membership in the Galactic Union for the human species. Murmurs filled the chamber. This was expected but still significant. For years, Earth has been held at arm's length, Bora continued. We were seen as too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous. You feared what we might bring to your peaceful society, and I understand that fear. We are not a gentle species. Our world made sure of that. She paused, letting her words sink in. But when you needed help, when your very existence was threatened, we answered. We bled for you. We died for you. We showed you that our violence can be directed, that our aggression can be controlled, that our danger can be wielded on behalf of those who need protection. The Quoron representative stood. You created weapons that horrify us. You use tactics we consider barbaric. How can we trust that you will not turn these same methods against us? Because that is not who we are, Bora replied firmly. Yes, we are warriors. Yes, we know violence. But we choose to use that strength to protect, not to conquer. Earth has a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. We understand our power. We accept the responsibility that comes with it. The debate went on for hours. Some species argued for immediate acceptance. Others wanted restrictions, limits on human military power, oversight councils. The Pelthans, who had fought beside the humans at Forward Base Theta, argued most passionately in their favor. Finally, the vote was called. It passed with 68% approval. Earth was now a full member of the Galactic Union. When the news reached Forward Base Theta, the human soldiers celebrated with quiet satisfaction. They hadn't fought for recognition, but it was good to be accepted nonetheless. Commander Hyunwoo stood in the command center, watching reports come in from across Union space. The swarm was in full retreat. Preliminary estimates suggested it would take them decades to rebuild their numbers. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. We're shipping out tomorrow, he told his assembled officers. The Union wants us to help establish training programs for their forces. Teaching them human tactics. Do you think they can learn? Captain Dayun asked. Some will, not all. Their biology limits them in ways they can't overcome, but they can learn to work smarter, to think strategically, to prepare better. Hyunwoo looked at each of his officers. We didn't win because we're stronger. We won because we refused to accept defeat. That's what we'll teach them. The UES Indomitable departed Forward Base Theta a week later. The station's personnel lined the observation decks to watch it go. 800 humans had arrived expecting to die in a futile last stand. 320 were leaving as heroes. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, a message went out across the entire Galactic Union. 3 days after the siege ended, Commander Hyunwoo called a meeting with the Galactic Union's leadership. The conference room was packed with high-ranking officials from every member species. They had come to thank the humans and discuss future defensive strategies. They were not prepared for what Hyunwoo had to say. "We need to attack the hive ship," he stated flatly. The room erupted in shocked voices. High Strategist Veltoth raised one of his four hands for silence. "Commander, surely you understand that boarding a hive ship is suicide. No Union force has ever successfully captured one." "Then it's time someone did," Hyunwoo replied. He brought up a tactical display showing the swarm fleet position. "The hive ship is their command center. Their queen lives there. If we destroy it, we break their entire operation in this sector." An Orveli admiral spoke up, his translator giving his words a bubbling quality. "Even if what you say is true, the defenses are impossible to overcome. The hive ship produces acid sprays, depressurizes sections to kill invaders, and can shift its internal temperature from freezing to boiling in seconds. We've trained for hostile environment combat," Captain Daeun said. She stood beside Hyunwoo, her flight suit still showing scorch marks from the recent battle. "Earth has environments just as deadly." "You cannot be serious," a Quarren representative said. Their crystalline body rang like a bell with agitation. "This is madness." Lieutenant Kite stepped forward. "I have a proposal that might change your minds." He activated his own display. "I've been studying swarm biology. They have no immune system as we understand it. They've evolved in isolated hive environments with no exposure to outside pathogens." "What are you suggesting?" Veltoth asked slowly. "We weaponize Earth biology," Kite explained. "A modified viral agent that spreads through their pheromone network. It won't kill them immediately, but it will disrupt their coordination and make them sick. Sick soldiers make mistakes." The room went silent. What Kite was describing was biological warfare on a scale that made the chemical dispersal seem tame by comparison. Ambassador Bora stood up. "I know this sounds extreme, but consider the alternative. The swarm will regroup and attack again. Next time they'll be prepared for our defenses. Next time you might not survive." The debate went on for hours. The Union's ethics board argued that such weapons violated every principle they stood for. The military commanders argued that principles meant nothing if everyone was dead. Finally, they put it to a vote. The decision passed by a narrow margin. The attack was approved. Preparation took 5 days. Lieutenant Kite worked around the clock to perfect the viral agent. It had to be contagious enough to spread quickly, but specific enough not to harm other species. Medic Suman helped him, using her medical knowledge to ensure the virus would incapacitate rather than kill. Even in war, the humans tried to maintain some humanity. Captain Daeun drilled her surviving pilots until they could fly the attack patterns in their sleep. The plan called for a lightning strike through the swarm's defensive screen, followed by a hard burn to the hive ship. They would be exposed for at least 10 minutes while the boarding craft locked on. 10 minutes where swarm fighters would tear them apart. "We'll lose half the squadron," one pilot said during a briefing. "Probably," Daeun agreed. "But the other half will get through. That's what matters." Private Taemin was selected for the boarding team. It was an honor, though one that came with a high chance of death. Sergeant Youngsik would lead his squad personally. "You did good in the siege," Youngsik told Taemin as they prepared their gear. "I'm trusting you to do the same on the ship." "I won't let you down," Taemin promised. "I know you won't. That's why you're coming." The assault fleet launched at 0600 hours. 400 human soldiers split between 8 boarding craft. Captain Daeun's fighter squadron formed an escort, 40 ships against a swarm of thousands. The approach was brutal. Swarm fighters descended on them like a plague. Daeun's squadron scattered and engaged, drawing fire away from the boarding craft. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes. One of Daeun's wingmen died in the first 30 seconds. Then another. Then 2 more. "Hold the line," Daeun ordered, even as her own ship took hits. Warning lights flashed across her console. "Get those soldiers to the target." She pulled into a vertical climb that her damaged ship barely managed. 3 swarm fighters followed. She led them away from the boarding craft, deeper into enemy territory. Her fuel was critical. Her weapons were almost empty. But she kept flying. One of the swarm fighters got a lock on her. She felt the impact as something hit her engine. Her ship began to spin. She fought the controls, trying to keep it stable long enough to eject. But then one of her squadron mates appeared from nowhere and destroyed the swarm fighter. "I've got you, Captain. Get clear." Daeun managed to stabilize her dying ship and nurse it back toward friendly lines. Behind her, the boarding craft reached the hive ship and locked on. Commander Hyunwoo led the first wave personally. The boarding craft cut through the hive ship's hull with shaped charges. The explosion was massive, tearing a hole 10 meters wide. The humans poured through before the swarm could react. The interior of the hive ship was exactly as terrible as described. The air was thick with chemical fumes that burned the lungs. The walls were covered in some kind of organic resin that dripped continuously. The temperature was cold enough to see their breath. "Gas masks on," Hyunwoo ordered. "Stay in formation." The swarm warriors came at them in waves. But here, in the narrow corridors of their own ship, their numbers meant less. The humans used the terrain, setting up crossfire positions and turning every junction into a defensive point. Private Tai Min fought alongside his squad, his rifle never silent. The swarm warriors were even more terrifying up close than they had been on the base, but he remembered his training. He remembered Young Sik's words. Fear was just his body preparing to fight. Lieutenant Kite carried the viral payload in a sealed container. His squad guarded him with their lives as they pushed deeper into the ship. They followed the pheromone trails, using the swarm's own navigation system against them. The temperature began to rise. The hive ship was trying to kill them by cooking them alive. The humans' armor protected them, but barely. Sweat poured down their faces inside their helmets. Their muscles ached, but they pushed forward. They reached the central ganglion after 2 hours of brutal fighting. It was a massive chamber filled with organic machinery that pulsed with bioluminescent light. This was the heart of the ship's coordination network. Kite placed the viral payload in the center of the chamber and activated it. The container broke open, and a fine mist spread through the air. Within minutes it would be circulating through the entire ship's atmosphere system. "Package delivered," Kite reported. "Let's get out of here." But the Swarm Queen had other ideas. She came at them from above, dropping from a hidden chamber in the ceiling. She was massive, 4 times the size of a normal warrior, with armor like tank plating. Her psychic presence hit the humans like a physical wave. Several soldiers collapsed immediately, clutching their heads. The Queen's mind was alien and terrible, filled with hunger and hate and an intelligence that was utterly without mercy. Commander Hyun-woo felt the psychic assault but pushed through it. Earth had taught humanity to endure. Wars, plagues, nuclear fire. Humans had survived everything their own world and each other could throw at them. One alien mind, no matter how powerful, couldn't break them. "Focus fire," he shouted. The humans opened up with everything they had. Bullets tore into the Queen's armor. Grenades exploded against her massive body. She screamed, a sound that was part rage and part shock. Nothing had ever hurt her before. Sergeant Young Sik ran forward with a plasma charge, the most powerful explosive in their arsenal. The Queen's blade limb swept down and caught him across the chest. His armor cracked and he fell. "Sergeant," Taemin screamed. He watched his mentor fall and something broke inside him. Or maybe it was something that finally came together. He grabbed the plasma charge from Young Sik's hand and ran at the Queen. She tried to grab him, but he was too fast, too determined. He planted the charge on her underbelly and triggered the timer. 5 seconds, he dove away. The explosion was massive, tearing through the Queen's armor and into her body. She collapsed, her massive form shaking the entire chamber. Her psychic scream cut off abruptly. The swarm throughout the ship suddenly went still. Without their Queen's guidance, they were lost. "All units fall back to extraction points," Hyunwoo ordered. "Set the antimatter charges. We're blowing the ship." Medic Sumin reached Sergeant Young Sik. His injuries were severe, but she had seen worse. "Stay with me," she told him. "You're not dying today." "Wasn't planning to," Young Sik gasped. The humans retreated through the dying hive ship, fighting running battles with confused swarm warriors. They reached their boarding craft with minutes to spare. The antimatter charges detonated just as the last soldier was pulled aboard. The hive ship tore itself apart from the inside. The explosion was visible from forward base Theta, a new star that burned briefly and then faded. In the aftermath, Captain Dai-Yun landed her damaged fighter on the station's deck. The attack came at dawn, though there was no real dawn in space. The term was just habit, a memory from planets with suns. The sensors screamed warnings as 50,000 swarm warriors crashed against forward base, Theta like a wave of living death. Commander Hyunwoo watched from the command center as the defensive turrets opened fire. Energy beams lanced out into the void, cutting through swarm warriors by the dozens. It didn't matter. For every one that fell, 10 more pushed forward. They didn't fear death. They didn't even understand it as individuals. They were part of something larger, something that wanted only to consume. All units, this is command. Hyunwoo spoke into the communication channel. Remember your training. Hold your positions. Make every shot count. The first wave hit the outer hull within minutes. The swarm warriors attached themselves to the station's surface and began cutting through with their blade limbs and acid spray. Alarms blared throughout the base. The battle had truly begun. Captain Da-Yun led her fighter squadron into the chaos. Space around the base was filled with swarm flyers, smaller creatures designed for vacuum combat. They swarmed around her ship like angry insects. Gold Squadron, split formation, she ordered. Make them chase you. Her pilots scattered in 12 different directions. The swarm flyers followed, just as she knew they would. The hive mind was intelligent but predictable. It responded to threats with overwhelming force. Da-Yun used that against them. She pulled her fighter into a spiral dive that would have killed a normal pilot. 8 Gs of force pressed against her body. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel. Every muscle screamed. But she had trained for this her entire life. She pushed through the pain and came out of the dive with 6 swarm flyers still on her tail. Now, she said calmly. Her wingman appeared from above and opened fire. The swarm flyers were caught in a crossfire. They tried to scatter, but they were too slow. Within seconds, all 6 were debris. Nice shooting, Da-Yun said. You made it easy, her wingman replied. But there was no time to celebrate. More swarm flyers were coming. Always more. On the outer defensive ring, Private Taemin stood at his position with his squad. They were in a pressurized corridor that led to one of the main airlocks. It was a choke point. If the swarm broke through here, they could flood into the base's interior. Steady, said Sergeant Young-sik, who was commanding this section. Let them come to us. The first swarm warriors breached the airlock 3 minutes later. The doors exploded inward and the creatures poured through. They were exactly as the briefings described. 2 meters of armored nightmare moving with terrible speed. Fire! Young-sik ordered. Taemin squeezed his trigger and his rifle roared to life. The recoil was solid and reassuring in his hands. His bullets tore through the first swarm warrior, punching holes in its armor. It stumbled but kept coming. He fired again, aiming for the joints where the armor was weakest. The warrior fell, but behind it were 20 more. The humans fell back in stages, just as they had practiced. They fought from one defensive position to the next, turning every meter of corridor into a killing zone. The swarm warriors were fast and strong, but they were predictable. They charged straight ahead with no tactics beyond overwhelming force. The humans used that against them. They placed mines that detonated when the swarm clustered together. They funneled the creatures into narrow passages where numbers meant nothing. They used grenades, flamethrowers, and when ammunition ran low, they fought with combat knives and sheer determination. Taemin found himself face to face with a swarm warrior when his rifle clicked empty. The creature's mandibles opened wide, dripping with acid. Taemin didn't think. He just reacted. He pulled his combat knife and drove it up into the soft tissue under the warrior's jaw. The blade went deep. The creature shuddered and collapsed. Good kill, Young-sik said, appearing beside him. Keep moving. In the eastern sector, Lieutenant Kite's squad was cut off. They had been deploying chemical dispersal units when the swarm broke through faster than expected. Now they were surrounded in a maintenance tunnel with no easy way out. Options? Kite asked his team. We could try to fight through, someone suggested. We'd die before we made it 10 meters, another replied. Kite studied his tactical display. The tunnel system was complex, designed for maintenance crews to access every part of the station. The swarm knew the main routes but not the secondary passages. We go down, he decided, through the maintenance shafts. Come up behind them. That's crazy, one soldier said. It's effective, Kite replied. Move. They descended into the narrow shafts that wound through the station's infrastructure. It was cramped and dark and terrifying. Behind them, they could hear the swarm tearing through the tunnels, hunting them. But Kite knew something the swarm didn't. Humans were good at thinking in 3 dimensions. Earth's evolution had included climbing trees, swimming in oceans, flying through the air. They understood spatial relationships in ways the ground-bound swarm could not. They came up 3 levels below their original position, directly behind a group of swarm warriors. Kite's squad opened fire. The swarm never knew what hit them. By the time reinforcements arrived, the humans were gone, moving through the maintenance system like ghosts. In the medical bay, medic Su-min worked without stopping. The wounded came in waves. Humans and aliens both, torn and broken by the brutal combat. She treated them all with the same focused intensity. An alien medic worked beside her, learning as they went.
How do you not get overwhelmed?
The alien asked after the 10th hour of continuous surgery. You focus on the person in front of you, Su Min replied, not looking up from her work. Save this life. Then the next one, then the next. You don't think about the numbers. You just work. A human soldier was brought in with a piece of swarm blade embedded in his chest. The wound was catastrophic. The alien medic stepped back in horror. He's lost too much blood. There's nothing we can do. There's always something we can do, Su Min said firmly. She called for synthetic blood and began working. The surgery took 2 hours. The soldier's heart stopped twice. Both times, Su Min brought him back. When it was over and the soldier was stable, the alien medic looked at her with something like awe. You refused to let him die. That's my job, Su Min said simply. Now let's get ready for the next one. The battle raged for 12 hours straight, then 24, then 36. The swarm never stopped coming. They filled the corridors with their bodies, they died by the thousands, and still they came. The alien forces began to break. Entire units abandoned their positions and fled deeper into the base. They had fought beyond their limits. They had seen too much death. Their minds could not handle the endless horror. The humans did not break. Sergeant Young's 6th unit held the reactor building for 14 hours without relief. They were surrounded, outnumbered, running low on everything. An alien officer called over the radio and ordered them to retreat while they still could. Negative, Young 6 replied. We were told to hold this position. So we hold. You'll die there. Maybe. But the reactor won't fall while we're still alive. The alien officer didn't understand. His species had never developed that particular human trait, the ability to hold a position against impossible odds simply because you were told to. The willingness to die rather than fail in your duty. But High Strategist Veltoth understood. He watched the human positions on the tactical display and saw something he had never seen before. Not a single human unit had broken. Not one had retreated without orders. They fought like they were born to it, because they were. On the 48th hour, something changed. Lieutenant Kite's chemical agent had been dispersed throughout the station's ventilation system. It took time to work, seeping into the swarm's coordination network. The pheromones that held the hive mind together began to break down. The swarm warriors started making mistakes. They attacked each other. They missed obvious targets. Their perfect coordination dissolved into chaos. All units, push forward, Commander Hyunwoo ordered. This is our chance. The humans went on the offensive. They were exhausted, covered in blood and acid burns, running on stimulants and sheer willpower. But they moved forward anyway. They reclaimed lost corridors. They drove the swarm back toward the breaches. Captain Dayun's squadron had taken heavy losses, but they were still flying. She led one final strike against the swarm command ship, the vessel coordinating the attack. Her fighter took 3 hits and her left engine was failing. But she got close enough to launch her missiles. The command ship exploded in a ball of fire. Without coordination and without leadership, the swarm began to retreat. They pulled back from the base, dragging their dead with them. By the time the sun rose on the nearby planet, a real sun this time, not just a measure of hours, the battle was over. Forward base Theta had held. The cost was terrible. 4,000 alien soldiers dead, hundreds more wounded beyond recovery. Entire sections of the base were destroyed. The humans had lost 47 soldiers killed and another 150 wounded. By any standard, it was a bloodbath, but they had held the line. Commander Hyunwoo walked through the corridors in the aftermath. He saw his soldiers sitting against walls too tired to move. He saw aliens looking at humans with new eyes. The airlock doors opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Commander Hyunwoo stepped through first, his boots clanging on the metal deck of forward base Theta. Behind him, 800 human soldiers followed in perfect formation. The alien reception committee was waiting. At the front stood High Strategist Veltoth, a Pelthan who looked like a cross between a deer and a mantis. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Around him stood officers from 6 other species, all watching the humans with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Veltoth's translator device crackled to life. Welcome to Forward Base Theta, Commander Hyunwoo. We are grateful for your assistance in our darkest hour. Hyunwoo saluted. We're here to help. Show us what we're dealing with. The walk through the base was sobering. Everywhere they looked, there was damage and despair. Wounded aliens filled the medical bays. Soldiers with blank, traumatized stares sat in corridors. Entire sections of the station were sealed off due to hull breaches. The smell of fear was thick in the recycled air. Captain Dahun walked beside Hyunwoo, her eyes taking in everything. They're broken, she said quietly. Not yet, Hyunwoo replied. But close. They reached the command center where Veltoth had prepared a briefing. The room was circular with a large holographic display in the center. When activated, it showed the approaching swarm fleet in horrifying detail, thousands of red dots moving toward the base like a spreading disease. The swarm will be here in 48 hours, Veltoth explained. His voice trembled slightly. Our intelligence estimates 50,000 warriors in the first wave. They will try to overwhelm our defenses through pure numbers. Lieutenant Kite stepped forward to study the display. He was taking notes on his data tablet, his face expressionless. Tell me about their biology. Veltoth brought up an image of a swarm warrior. It looked like a nightmare-made flesh. 2 meters tall, covered in black chitinous armor with blade-like limbs and mandibles that could crush steel. They are highly resistant to energy weapons. They can survive in vacuum for short periods. They feel no pain and show no fear. Every warrior is connected to the hive mind, making them perfectly coordinated. And they outnumber us 5 to 1, added another alien officer, a Quoran whose crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns. The room fell silent. The weight of impossible odds pressed down on everyone present. Everyone except the humans, similar to what we call ants back home, Kite said calmly, except bigger and meaner. What about their weak points? Veltoth's eyes widened. Weak points? Commander, did you understand what I just said? These creatures are nearly unstoppable. We have lost entire armies to them. Everything has weak points, Kite insisted. How do they communicate? What holds the hive mind together? Pheromones, Veltoth said reluctantly. Chemical signals passed between warriors, but disrupting that would require chemical weapons. The Union has banned such barbaric tools for 300 years. We haven't, Hyunwoo said flatly. Lieutenant, start working on a disruption agent. I want it ready before they arrive. The alien officers looked horrified. One of them, an aquatic Orvelli in a mobility suit, spoke up. You would use chemical weapons? That is against all civilized rules of warfare. Your civilization is about to die, Captain Dayun said bluntly. Maybe it's time to break some rules. The briefing continued for another hour. Veltoth showed them the base defenses, the troop positions, the evacuation plans. The humans listened carefully, asking questions that made the aliens uncomfortable. How much ammunition did they have? What were acceptable casualty rates? Where were the choke points that could be held even if the outer defenses fell? When it was over, Veltoth approached Hyunwoo privately. Commander, I must ask. Your soldiers seem very calm about this. Do they understand the danger? Hyunwoo looked at the high strategist. They understand perfectly. They're from Earth. We grew up with danger. I have read about your world, Veltoth said quietly. A Class 12 death world. Gravity twice what most species can tolerate. Predators that hunt in packs. Diseases that can wipe out entire populations. Weather that kills without warning. How does anything survive there? By being tougher than everything trying to kill us, Hyunwoo replied. That's what we do. That's what we are. The human soldiers spent the next day preparing. They unpacked their equipment and the aliens watched in fascination and horror. The humans wore armor that weighed 60 kilograms. Most adult Pelthans only weighed 40 kilograms total. The armor was covered in attachment points for weapons, ammunition, and tools. Private Taemin was checking his rifle when an alien soldier approached. It was a young Pelthan, barely older than Taemin himself. May I ask a question? The alien said through his translator. Sure, Taemin replied, not looking up from his work. Why does your weapon fire solid projectiles? Energy weapons are much more efficient. Taemin patted his rifle fondly. Bullets don't run out of charge. They don't care about electromagnetic interference. And they hit hard. Real hard. But that seems so primitive. Sometimes primitive works, Taemin said with a grin. My ancestors were throwing rocks at their enemies 10,000 years ago. This is just a really advanced rock. In the medical bay, Medic Su Min was setting up her equipment when several alien medics came to observe. They watched as she prepared surgical tools, trauma kits, and bottles of synthetic blood. "You carry equipment to treat such severe injuries?" one of them asked. "Are you expecting heavy casualties?" "I'm expecting to save lives," Suman replied. "You hope for the best but prepare for the worst. That's how you survive. But some of these procedures look so invasive, so painful." Suman paused and looked at the alien medics. They were gentle creatures from gentle worlds. They had probably never seen truly catastrophic injuries before this war. "Pain means you're alive," she said simply. "My job is to keep people alive. Everything else is secondary." Captain Daoun took her fighter squadron out for a practice run. The alien flight controllers protested when they saw the maneuvers she was planning. 9 gravity turns, sudden stops, inverted flying through the base's superstructure. It was reckless, they said, dangerous. Daoun proved them wrong. Her squadron moved through space like a school of sharks, perfectly coordinated and absolutely lethal. They pushed their craft to the edge of what the machines could handle. Then they pushed further. When they landed, one of the alien pilots approached Daoun. "How can you tolerate such forces? The acceleration alone would kill most of our pilots. We train in centrifuges from the day we enter flight school," Daoun explained. "Our bodies learn to handle it. Earth's gravity is already higher than standard. We're built for this." "You are built for war," the alien said quietly. Daoun didn't deny it. Lieutenant Kite worked in a sealed laboratory with 2 of the Union's biochemists. He had analyzed the swarm pheromone samples and was synthesizing a counteragent. The alien scientists were brilliant but cautious. They questioned every step, worried about ethics and consequences. "This could be considered a war crime by Union law," one of them said nervously. "Your Union won't exist if we don't stop the swarm," Kite replied. He didn't mean it cruelly, just as a statement of fact. Sometimes survival requires hard choices. By the end of the first day, the base felt different. The presence of humans changed something fundamental. The aliens began to feel a spark of hope. These newcomers from the deadly world didn't seem afraid. They prepared for battle like it was just another day at work. Sergeant Young-Sik gathered the younger soldiers that evening. Taman sat with them, listening as the old veteran spoke. "You're going to see things that will haunt you," Young-Sik said. "You're going to be scared. That's normal. But remember, fear is just your body getting ready to fight. Use it. Don't let it control you." "What if we're not good enough?" one soldier asked. Young-Sik smiled grimly. "We're from Earth. We're always good enough. We just have to prove it to everyone else." That night, Commander Hyunwoo stood on an observation deck looking out at the stars. Ambassador Bora joined him. "The aliens are starting to believe," she said. "Starting to," Hyunwoo agreed. "But talk is easy. The real test comes when the swarm arrives. Are you confident we can hold?" Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment. "I'm confident we'll do everything we can. That's all any soldier can promise." In the darkness of space, the swarm fleet drew closer. Sensors tracked their approach. 43 hours until contact. The countdown had begun. Forward base. Theta held its breath and waited for the storm. The emergency signal traveled across space faster than light itself. It carried a simple message that would change everything. The Galactic Union was dying, and they needed help from anyone who would answer. Ambassador Bora stood in her office on Earth, watching the red emergency beacon flash on her screen. She had served as Earth's representative to the Alien Alliance for 3 years now. In all that time, the Union had never asked Earth for military help. They had always been afraid of humans. Now that fear meant nothing compared to their desperation. The message was clear. The Void Swarm had broken through the last defensive line. Millions of insectoid creatures were moving toward the capital world of the Galactic Union. The alien military forces had tried to stop them and failed. Most of their soldiers were dead or wounded. The species that made up the Union were peaceful by nature. They had herbivores, aquatic beings, and crystalline life forms. None of them were built for the kind of brutal fighting that the swarm brought. Bora read the casualty numbers again. 70% losses. Entire fleets destroyed. Planets evacuated. The Union had maybe 2 months before the swarm reached their core worlds. After that, billions would die. She picked up her communication device and sent a message to Earth's military command. Within an hour, she had her answer. Earth would send help. Commander Hyunwoo received his orders at 0500 hours. He was a tall man with gray streaks in his dark hair. and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had fought in the corporate wars on Mars, led peacekeeping missions on Europa, and survived combat in 3 different star systems. Now he was being asked to take his battalion to fight aliens that most humans had never even heard of. His second-in-command, Captain Da-Yun, was already waiting in the briefing room. She was younger than Hyunwoo, with sharp features and the quick movements of a natural pilot. She had the best reflexes in the fleet. Her hands were never still, always moving as if she was flying even when standing on the ground. 800 soldiers, Da-Yun said as Hyunwoo entered. That's all they're sending? That's all they asked for, Hyunwoo replied. He brought up the tactical display. The Union thinks we're providing a token force. A gesture of goodwill. Da-Yun smiled. It was not a kind smile. They don't know us very well, do they? No, they don't. The battalion assembled over the next 48 hours. 800 men and women from every continent on Earth. They came from different backgrounds, different cultures, different beliefs. But they all had one thing in common. They were soldiers from a death world and they knew how to fight. Private Taimin was one of the youngest at 22 years old. He had joined the military straight out of school, looking for purpose and adventure. He found both, though not always in the way he expected. As he packed his gear, his hand shook slightly. This would be his first real combat mission off Earth. Nervous? Asked the soldier next to him. Taemin looked up. It was Sergeant Young-sik, a veteran with 30 years of service. His face was weathered and scarred, but his eyes were kind. A little, Taemin admitted. Good, Young-sik said. Fear keeps you alive. Just remember your training and stay close to your squad. We take care of our own. The human fleet departed from Earth's orbital station 3 days later. The main ship was called the UES Indomitable, a heavy cruiser designed for long-range military operations. It carried the entire battalion plus support staff, medical teams, and enough weapons and ammunition for a prolonged campaign. Medic Su-min set up her medical bay on the 2nd day of their journey. She was a compact woman with steady hands and a calm demeanor that never seemed to break, even in chaos. She had trained for 10 years to become a field surgeon, learning how to treat injuries that ranged from simple cuts to catastrophic trauma. Now she was preparing to treat alien species she had only seen in textbooks. Lieutenant Kite helped her organize the medical supplies. He was the battalion's tactical officer and xenobiology specialist. He knew more about alien life forms than anyone else in the unit. Their biology is different from ours, he explained as he handed her data tablets. But the basics are the same. They bleed, they hurt, they die. Your training will adapt. What about the swarm? Su-min asked. What do we know about them? Kite's expression darkened. Not much. They're insectoid, hive mind. They don't negotiate, don't retreat, don't show mercy. They just consume everything in their path. The journey to Forward Base Theta took 2 weeks at maximum jump speed. During that time, Commander Hyunwoo drilled his soldiers constantly. They trained in zero gravity, in extreme temperatures and simulated urban combat. The Union had sent technical specifications for the base and information about the swarm's tactics. Hyunwoo made sure every soldier knew what they were walking into. Captain Da-Yun spent her time with the fighter pilots. There were 40 of them, flying craft designed for atmospheric and space combat. She pushed them hard, running simulation after simulation, pull 8 Gs in a turn, 9, 10. The pilots gritted their teeth and endured. On Earth, this kind of training was normal. In space, among aliens who came from gentler worlds, it was almost unthinkable. Ambassador Bora traveled with the fleet. She needed to be there when they arrived, to handle the diplomatic aspects of Earth's intervention. She spent her time learning everything she could about the Galactic Union's political structure. Earth was not a member yet. This mission could change that for better or worse. On the final night before arrival, Hyunwoo gathered his officers in the conference room. They stood around the holographic display showing Forward Base Theta and the surrounding space. We're walking into a desperate situation, Hyunwoo said. The Union forces are broken. They've been losing for months. They're scared and they're expecting us to fail just like they did. Let them think that, Da-Eun said. We'll show them what humans can do. This isn't about showing off, Hyunwoo replied sharply. This is about survival. Theirs and ours. The swarm doesn't care about species or politics. If they break through here, they'll keep going. Eventually, they'll reach Earth. That sobered the room. Earth was protected by distance and isolation, but not forever. What happened here mattered. Our job is simple, Hyunwoo continued.
Hold the line.
Protect the base. Buy the Union time to evacuate their civilians and regroup their forces. We're not trying to win the war. We're just trying to make sure they survive long enough to have a chance. Lieutenant Ki-tae raised his hand. What if we can do more than that? Hyunwoo looked at him. Then we do more. But we survive first. Understood? Yes, sir. The fleet dropped out of jump space the next morning. Forward Base Theta appeared on the screens, a massive station orbiting a gas giant. Even from a distance, they could see the damage. Entire sections were dark. Debris floated in orbit. Ships limped toward docking bays trailing atmosphere. My God, someone whispered. Stay focused, Hyunwoo ordered. This is what we came to fix. Prepare for landing. The Indomitable moved toward the station. On the command deck, Hyunwoo watched the alien ships scatter to make room for them. He could almost feel their fear and hope mixing together. They had asked for reinforcements. What they were about to get was something the galaxy had never seen before. They were about to learn what soldiers from a death world could do when pushed to fight. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud. The airlock pressurized. Commander Hyunwoo stood at the front of his battalion, 800 humans in full combat gear, and waited for the doors to open. The war was about to change.